Yeah, I would like harass people. I'd be like, show me how to use this gear, show me how to record this, and then like if people would just show me stuff.
Grimes continues to be surprised that she made it, which is precisely why her art is so impactful. I read a comment somewhere that pointed out that Grimes is kind of like that eccentric kid in your science class who knows way too much about dinosaurs. That also happens to be a musical genius. And I feel like that resonates to a staggering degree. And while it's certainly been a wild ride, if we can attribute anything to Grimes' success as a genre-defying artist, I think we have to look at her unrelenting sense of curiosity. I just want to say I'm a little scared to make this video. Please be gentle with me. Grimes' music definitely changed the way I create and make forever, but there is so much lore. My first foray into Grimes was in high school. I was listening on Pandora radio, and I got the Realiti demo as in one of my liked songs. But it's funny because beyond that, I didn't really seek out her music farther until I moved to New York, and then I started to dive deeper and just uncovered everything that people had been loving for years, and I just hadn't had the chance to expose myself to. So much of my music became inspired by her production, and before I dive into anything, I have to say that I am quite blessed, but also quite biased. About 2 years ago, or a year ago, 2 years ago, I think 2 years ago at this point, Grimes followed me on TikTok and said, love your music at like some random time in the morning, which was earth shattering and continues to really keep me going as an artist today. But I just want to get that out of the way. This is the lens that I am speaking from.
If I can be successful and still do what I want artistically and not feel like I have to compromise, that's awesome. Like I would never I'd rather be less successful and do what I want, but seeing that it seems that both things can happen, that's like pretty great, I think.
Do you ever worry about the way fame could affect you in a negative way?
No, I don't think so. I'm not, all the things, like whenever I see people that are just really, like obviously like they've taken things so like they've gotten weird, you know, like sometimes you're on like a shoot with somebody that'll just be like really rude to all the makeup people and stuff, and it's just so disgusting to me that it's always just like, just never be like that. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Kate. I'm an artist, and this is my series called Cattle Considerations, where I talk about music, culture, and the internet. Something we don't talk enough about when it comes to Grimes is the sheer curiosity and humor that has led to this chaotically beautiful career. I did some digging, as I do, and I went through all of Grimes' Tumblr, which was a lot, but we can see before Grimes blew up, so to speak, she had some shows outdoors where everyone was getting poison ivy. She was in a noise band and just through and through creating things long before we heard about her. There was also this funny photo of, I guess she dissected some brains with a date one time. That was cool. But yes, I thought this was important because I think the Wikipedia slash artist bio condensed story is usually told as Grimes had to learn logic, I think, for a school assignment while studying neuroscience. And while I don't doubt that was true, I think it's important for people, especially artists, to know that she was practicing long before in many disciplines, but also in music. The first two albums, we have Geidi Primes and Halfaxa. You can still find some of Grimes' unreleased music between these periods. There's a song called 15 Minutes To, and I know it's very easy for Grimes fans to complain about not having enough music, but it's very clear since the beginning of Grimes being a more public artist, she puts a lot of care and curation into what she's putting out there. There are probably hundreds of songs that we won't hear and will never hear, and that's because she is curious to try and create the best thing that she can create, and I think artists are better for embracing that. I was directed to Grimes out of a desire to find more femme producers. I thought it was really cool to see on her Tumblr like sharing one of her favorite vocal EQs from back in the day, and I think it's very apparent that she is and continues to be a student of the internet. While I a lot of times tend to err on the side of caution with things like AI, I don't think that it's surprising that she's generally very like pro tech.
I mean, even just to get to the point where I could like produce my own record and have everyone fuck off and not like give me shit for it, you know, just let me do my fucking job. Like, why else am I here? Like, I don't want to be just like the face of like this thing that I built. I want to be the person who built it.
When it's like this democratization of tech, though in a very different way, is what enabled her to learn her craft and express herself. But as I'll discuss, while it can seem that the Grimes project and persona, I guess, seems very jumbled or random at times, there are some consistent themes of being very pro iteration or building off of past works by other artists, and proliferation, trying to enable people with the tools and knowledge she has available. So the name Grimes allegedly came from the genres Claire or C selected off of her MySpace page, but not knowing what it really meant, just like the way it sound. I think it's similar in Halfaxa. It was originally like Halfax, but she added like the Halfaxa just because it sounded cool. I always love when people like myself think things have a very deep or specific meaning, and it's just like, no, it just kind of sounded cool. It's nice to be humbled. And from the very beginning, Geidi Primes was inspired off of the Dune series. So from the beginning, being very blatant of referencing as a form of appreciation of other art forms. Following Halfaxa, she toured a lot, which led to a new record deal, which led to Visions, which is the project I would argue that most people know about if they are going to know about Grimes's music. Visions is where we get Oblivion and Genesis. I really like Symphonia, My Weight Is You, and Night Music off of this album. There's a lot of conflicting stories about how this project was made, but we do know that it was made within a 2-week period because Grimes had a lot of pressure put on her to finish an album. Lots of success there that could be talked about. I also want to touch on that I think songs are so special when they come back into like the collective public consciousness several years after they're released, like we saw with Oblivion and Genesis as TikTok sounds out of nowhere. And then we have Art Angels, which incredible piece of work. I think my favorites, of course, like Kill V Main, Scream with Pan, Venus Fly, Butterfly, all bangers, all so cool, all very unlike anything I had heard before. I remember from this age seeing lots of media from Grimes expressing like the quote, "I don't want to be the face of this thing that I built. I want to be the person who built it," talking about how hard she had to work to be respected and appreciated as a producer, as lady in the industry. There's a lot of guitars. There's like a lot of aggressive sound design on this piece of work.
So much of my music is just like against like the people who are trying to take it away from me. You have to push people and you have to become aggressive or you can't get your way.
And this is speculation, but I think this album partly came from a need for Grimes to prove herself in a highly broified industry to showcase her production chops. She talked about using a lot of guitars deliberately because it felt like the sound and screaming was kind of like put into a box that women weren't expected or encouraged to play with. And this obviously very much resonated with me and so many other people because there are so many oddly gendered spaces within art, which should theoretically be one of the most free areas for expression. But it seems like the higher you go, the more bureaucracy and politics and unfortunately like subjugation that comes with it. And some of those tenets start to blur in exchange for being marketable. On her Tumblr, on this cover from Hunger magazine, she said, "This is one of the best shoots I've done for numerous reasons. I really love that it doesn't look particularly doll-like or feminine or super different from how I look in real life, which of course is part of the fun, like making something fantastical. But this was super comfortable just in the terms of what I personally want to project into the world as Claire." I just think these little Tumblr snippets are helpful contextually, just not as a marker of how the Grimes project has developed, but also like the world and the landscape that we live in now and how many shifts and culture we've gone through over the past several years. So Grimes does so many different things. She directs, she composes, she writes music, she paints. There's so many things. But for Art Angels, she did original paintings for each. They're still on her Tumblr. You can find them. Something that really struck me is that she searched far and wide for a Pan, previously known as Aristophanes, to contribute a verse on Scream.
Hey.
I'm curious about how did you find my music?
One of my friends actually found it and sent it to me, and I thought it was like, I just hadn't ever heard anything that sounded like it before. Do you have a job besides music?
I'm also a teacher, and I help children to write stories. So that helps me a lot because I always inspired by the children.
Do you show them your music?
No!
I think Grimes's natural curiosity lends itself very well to naturally wanting to integrate her community in that process. And I think with the traditional, celebrity maybe isn't the right word, but just, I guess, like artists on a high visibility level, I don't feel like that's necessarily seen as the norm or something you do, especially like bringing up smaller artists on such a large scale. So I always thought that was really inspiring, and I can't imagine what it must have been like for Pan at the time, who I think in the interview talked about how, she was really sick rapper by night and teacher by day. And that's the reality for 99.9% of musicians and artists, really. However, following Art Angels moving into the Miss Anthropocene era, I think Grimes felt as though that project was somewhat misunderstood as a pop album exercise. Grimes saw it more as a genre exercise that showed what she could do as a producer. "I just wish I could make music in a vacuum. It's good to make people mad, actually. I retract my statement. If you can make people mad without actually hurting anyone, that's probably a good thing." So this statement is very interesting to me. This comes from a quote where she also denounced Art Angels a little bit, or like distanced herself from it, which I don't think is atypical. I think a lot of artists, myself included, looking back on your past work, you're like, even though many can still enjoy it and get value from it. But I think we get a little peek of Grimes's value of pushing boundaries in order to ideally farther a creative conversation. And while I do think, unfortunately, this can slip into the personal and be a tricky slope when it comes to being a public figure, I think her art definitely accomplishes that. There was the NPC group, which there was one song, and then I believe the song Pretty Dark was originally going to be released under a different side project, which again, very relatable. I think most of us who don't have a media team like start lots of things and then just never pick them up again, just because that's often how creativity works, or just it's hard to stay focused when there's like so many wonderful things that you can do with your time. Miss Anthropocene, I cannot say the title to save my life, came out of a period where there was a lot of public backlash, which I'll touch on a little bit later. But the idea was playing into the villain, writing like this is highly reductive, but if I can't be the hero, I'll be the villain. Kind of like a Grimes-esque reputation, or even like, you know, Ariana's album right now. And that, which takes us to today, where we have the GrimesAI project, which, if you don't know, Grimes allows anyone to license an AI copy of her voice. Essentially, you could sing something and then put it through the model of Grimes's voice, and then you can release that song, and if it gets to like a certain level or something like that, royalties split totally evenly. You get to be on the GrimesAI page. Very cool way to interact and collaborate with her community. I think for some people, they were kind of jarred by this embrace of AI. But again, I think Grimes has always shown a love for cutting edge and pushing boundaries, even if we don't know what those pitfalls are going to be of yet. One of the quotes she reposted is, I think if you are an artist, you have to have a certain courage. Repeating yourself or photocopying others' art is cowardice. If you actually risk your career to do something new, even if it's in a very small way, then it's art. Which is interesting, because I do think some people, and I'm still trying to sort out how I feel, like where my boundaries are on it, but I do think some people argue that AI in general is not the same as like referencing past work, or it's not the same as like embracing a new technology like photography was at its time, because there's not the human perspective filtering through, right? A lot of these models are just taking in data and remashing them. But then on the other side, I can see like, okay, you still need somebody to help cater these models. And if you've played around with any of these new AI tools, you'll know that a lot of times you have to like learn how to prompt engineer to get anything decent. There's also like a lot of AI that has been around and just hasn't been packaged as AI for a long time now. But anyway, different discussion. The point is early adaptation of new technologies. Love of communal creation. One thing I can wholeheartedly agree on is Grimes's position around copyright, in that it definitely needs to be restructured. I always thought it was weird that sampling is so protective. Like in filmmaking, it's considered an homage if you're referencing someone's artwork, and it's an honor. It's not, please give me money. But of course, I think there is a real frustration from a lot of musicians because there is no money in the business. But I don't think like copyright is the place to chase that sort of sustainability. I see copyright as a barrier to expression and sharing in the collective conversation of art. Grimes's curiosity often gets her into tricky situations due to her radical imperfection and honesty in the public eye. She's talked many times about having a lack of media training. She tends to overshare, is a little goofy.
You have to think independent. Do it yourself. You're up there all by yourself pretty much on stage, aren't you?
Yeah, sometimes I have a band these days. Although we're in a fight right now, so they're not playing with me.
Why are you...
It's like so beyond awkward that it's just not awkward. Should I leave?
I can connect with that. There's this post from her, I guess, interviewing people in 2013 where she was just smelling Ray Dalton on the red carpet. I think she's just genuinely kind of a goofy little person. There's that video of her talking about eating only spaghetti. And even now, like, if you've watched any of her DJ sets, it's nice to see some of the mistakes. Like, she'll make a mistake and then say, "Oh, sorry, guys," which I think a lot of artists would take a different approach, but I think it's kind of endearing and a little, it's inspiring to see someone on that level still try and do things publicly that maybe they're not the most proficient at yet.
And I think like the fact that I'm not a super proficient guitar player or violin player or whatever is kind of important.
For the sake of learning and pursuing. If you look at her Tumblr, it's full of sharing creations from many other artists, as well as like cat photos and paintings. She made an entire fanzine for art angels featuring all of the artists who sent in the work, shouting out their work. She continues to find artists on social media to this day and shout them out and share fan art now, which is so cool, and she definitely doesn't need to do that. Some of my mutuals I know also interacted with Grimes in some way because she liked their music, and I've never had that kind of communal conversation with an artist, even if it's just by observation. On her Tumblr, publicly supporting some of her dancers who leveled up and were dancing for Beyonce. A continual love of music across any genre and curiosity to discover more, even after all this time, and even when she has nothing to prove other than the love of it. And one thing I really love about Grimes is that she never cheapens pop, and yet she makes some of the most complex music ever, right? We see an active love of like Dolly Parton, Lana Del Rey, FKA Twigs, Selena Gomez, 21 Pilots, Ramona Lisa, hello, Caroline Polachek, and so much more. I think she's always expressed herself in this very like genuine person on the internet way. But now there just happens to be a lot more people watching, and for that, unfortunately, we have to talk about the Elon elephant in the room, which is the association and procreation with Elon Musk. And unfortunately for so many, this precedes her entire musical legacy, which is ironically like I feel like one of the most misogynistic things to come out of this whole thing. I remember telling people after I got my little shout out about it, and they were like, "Oh, Grimes, Elon Musk's girlfriend," which kind of broke my heart. In an interview with British publication Crack Magazine, Grimes expressed her current conundrum. "Without me doing anything, just by random association with other people, I've watched my career and reputation get totally smashed. I've worked my whole life for this, and now everyone thinks I'm so stupid. I was just sitting there incredulously watching my life's work go down the drain." I do have sympathy for any person, especially a woman in a highly male-dominated space, having her entire life's work discredited through her choice of partner. I think that continues to be a double standard, not just in who ladies choose to date, but also the level of backlash that they do receive proportionate to others. And I don't want to speculate on the nature of their relationship, but it's clear it's come at a very professional and personal cost. Can't imagine that's an easy place to continue to create from. I can understand how so many people feel alienated. Wow. Grimes is very adamant that she just likes to throw ideas at the wall nowadays, and she's not a politician. It is fair to say, like, her Tumblr back in the day, there were posts of her encouraging political acts like going out to vote or reducing your waste and things like that generally align with a liberal ideology. So I can see how such a huge disconnect can cause many to feel, I don't know, betrayed in some parasocial way. But regardless, around our personal feelings or non-feelings about that, I don't think discounting all of her work and continued art is the solution or helpful. And I'm not sure I would have that perspective if it wasn't for Grimes being so forefront about being a bit of an edgelord commentator. In the live stream with Hassan Abi, I'm probably saying that wrong and I apologize, but she just blatantly said, like, you know, when people ask her about questionable, and there have been some questionable things that she said in the past, a lot of times she'll just say, like, I wasn't thinking, that was a dumb thing to say.
We don't have to talk about it if you don't want to, but
I mean, I was just being dumb there. I feel like my job as an artist is to just sort of like throw out ideas into the world, and some of them are probably going to be huge failures, and some of them might be good. And I'm not a strategist. I am not a politician. I enjoy thinking about extreme potentialities, like what could happen, and like I just like run my mouth and say crazy stuff, and I don't know, I think that's sort of the role of the artist. But I think what has gotten tricky is, like, normally, like in the regular reality, I would just be some like weird indie person and like be saying a bunch of crazy shit, and there'd be a tiny amount of people seeing it, and it would be in a bubble. But due to circumstances of life, my stupid shit has been amplified into some mainstream contexts, and then I keep getting burned because I'm like way too crazy and not media trained.
And she owns up to it. I don't, you know, I think there are times where like she doubles down, but it's usually an invitation to debate and talk about it farther. I think sometimes Grimes's curiosity can lead to an unshakable optimism, which can be perceived as naive, but I think at the core of it, she really just wants to connect with a wide range of people. The early Nardwar interview talked about how her grandparents come from this background that is widely different from one of her parents' background, who's in politics on the left side. And so it seems like Grimes has been around a variety of perspectives her entire life, and someone who can hold both of those things publicly or attempts to can understandably have a very trying time in today's political landscape. She also has a pattern of like saying things which spark attention, but then if you look into the farther context of what she's saying, it's usually a lot less barbed as we might initially perceive. There's many controversies. I feel like I can't speak to a lot of them because they don't affect me. But there was one time I remember where she was quoted where in an interview she kind of said like, oh, patriarchy is kind of cool. Which, you know, that's a hard thing to hear from someone who, like, one of the very few super successful lady producers, right? But then if you look farther into the quote, she elaborates saying, there's all these countries that were faring the best, had female leaders, and I thought, this is pretty telling. I think what we need to do is stop attacking the things we don't like and work harder to build the things we do like. We shouldn't expect the people who are not us to hand things and make things for us. We should make our own systems. Everyone recognizes that almost all of the systems of modernity are messed up and broken. Everything is broken. We're not going to make the world less hostile to women, but we can create institutions which are great for women. So in my interpretation, it's more of like, I want to detract from this label or category and focus on building things as an entity, which I get that, you know. I feel conflicted when, you know, even like using the hashtag female producer, like I want to find other lady producers because you have a very unique experience in a space, but the ultimate goal is to just be seen as a producer, and it's like this weird impossible thing that it's just hard to navigate. This was also around the time when Miss Anthropocene was coming out. She had these billboards come out that said global warming is good because Miss Anthropocene was written in perspective of like an evil god. Artistically, Grimes is a very open book, and that doesn't always bode well in a world where words can hold the weight of weapons for some, especially if they don't know the context of the Grimes project and lore, especially with Miss Anthropocene, which, by the way, I don't think I talked about. Love it. 4 a.m., absolute mind-blowing banger. Violence, love it. Dark Side, You'll Miss Me When You're Not Around, Delete Forever, great, amazing, love it. Being a Grimes fan can be confusing for many, but I don't know if this is projection or I'm just biased or whatever, or if I'm just saying that because I'm afraid of what people on the internet are going to ascertain about me. But I think at the end of the day, she's just a curious person, and sometimes the things that come out of her mouth aren't the most refined because her top value is expression and trying to commit to the conversation, especially if that conversation or expression includes risk. But doing that with grace is difficult. Grimes's curiosity in its best light leads to the relentless pursuit of the best art possible. As Grimes says, I throw out music all the time. I have almost 1,000 gigabytes of unreleased music on my hard drive. I just want the next album to be as good as possible. I also thought it was really sweet on her Tumblr. She has this quote with Dolly Parton that she posted that says, "You'll never do a whole lot unless you're brave enough to try," which is so sweet. Grimes cannot help but create, and she's just always throwing stuff at the wall and seeing what sticks. Some things stick better than ever, and some things don't stick, but I think she'd rather throw a bunch of stuff, irrespective to how that reflects on her personally, than not express herself. Art comes with bravery and a desire to look headfirst into the unknown for Grimes. I think sometimes that level of purity, honesty, and vulnerability is perceived or received or translated poorly in such a polarized landscape. But her art has always served this purpose and continues to be one of the most inspiring sonic experiences for me and so many other artists and music lovers. Don't think she realizes how impactful her art is and will continue to be. And for that, I feel like she's succeeded in her mission despite all of the noise. Yeah. Okay. Wow. I gotta say, sometimes I feel so silly. I'm like, I just talk to myself for so long about the things that I love. It's just strange. But I'm done. So yeah, I love Grimes's music and Grimes's art, and just encouraging to see someone continue to pursue. That's always great to see. But anyway, yeah, thank you so much for watching. I would love to hear what your favorite Grimes track is. Yeah, any and all thoughts are welcome. Thanks for watching, and I will see you later. Bye.